Welcome to Project Comedy, a podcast by and for military veterans doing stand-up comedy, turning military banter into quality stand-up comedy acts. We might be veterans, but our comedy aims to get everybody laughing. Once you realise you can write funny material and actually get on the stage and make people laugh, you're a comedian, right? Get on the circuit and you realise that there's loads of comedians out there. Just look at the number of comedians that are now heading to Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival. To succeed at each level of the stand-up business, you need to be unique, else you're not going to go very far. In fact, you might get a couple of gigs and find everything dries up for you. You need to stand out from your peers. Why else would a booker give you a slot? If you're doing a Fringe Festival, why would somebody choose your show over somebody else's? You need to be unique, not just your material, but you. Why is a booker, agent, or an individual audience member going to look at you and take something away from your performance that makes them remember you rather than the other comedians they've seen? And there are multiple aspects to being unique and exceptionally good reasons why you need to be. Not only for the audience to remember you, but to remain on the circuit and not be blackballed. To examine what unique means in all of its guises, I'm joined by Jamie Johnson, a man so unique, God didn't need to throw away the mold because he shaped him out of Play-Doh. Dan Wright's a man so unique, he only turns up for a podcast record when close family members manage to find an NHS dentist and Kanye West gets his Twitter/X account restored. And the man, the legend, Jay Sodegar, the man who won his unique status by being the only professional comedian that volunteers to hang out with us without the process of us getting him free beers. And I'm Jay Saunders. The only unique thing about me is I'm the only one of us that actually bothers to read the podcast plan. Welcome, gents.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Very true about the podcast plan.
Yeah. I don't think I've
Well, first
ever
and foremost, Dan, where the hell have you been? How are you? What's been going on?
As I've already explained, I've been reading podcast plans.
And just not turning up.
Well, the podcast plans have taken up a lot of time, so I've been focusing on that, really.
But how is life? You keeping well?
Fantastic. Just been very busy.
And we're delighted to have you here, Jay. I mean, it's a busy time for you because, let's put the plug in there straight away. The big advert. What happens as of Friday this week for you?
I am in Edinburgh. I'm doing the Fringe. I'm doing loads of shows. I'm teaching the comedy course. I'm doing the chat show, the Thursday show. Now it's called Early Late Show. I'm doing my own solo show, an hour. I'm comparing pics of the Fringes, and I'm doing guest spots on various bits and pieces. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'll be doing longer than 5 minutes than I did on your Brighton Fringe show. All I'm saying.
Oh, mate, it wasn't even 5 minutes. That was a joy. I must send you the recording of it. The look on your face when I said you've got to get off. I have never seen anybody look so insulted.
Now I've been heckled before, I'll be honest with you, and that was the first time someone said, "Get off now." First time ever. I was like, right,
just to let you know, people can't see hand gestures on a podcast.
Yeah, I know. That's in the podcast plan apparently, which obviously Daniel read, and I clearly haven't. So I'm going to mime the entire.
That's because I've read the podcast.
Just to bring you up to speed, Dan, what actually happened was our very first night, we were very low on audience. Jamie and Gabe did a brilliant thing. They got it, and we ended up with a really lovely audience. So we went through each one of the acts. So we ended up with Gabe opening. There was Jamie, did his set. I did mine. I'm so proud. I'm bringing my mentor onto the stage. He gets up on the stage, does his first gag. As I get to the back of the stage, the venue came up, went, "The pub's closed, shut down. They need to be out within 5 minutes."
What?
And I had to go and tell Jay, went, "Sorry, mate, we're being thrown out. We're being thrown out." He had spent all this time, basically, as we put in the last podcast, Jay didn't so much perform for us. He became our emotional support comedian. We're now going to have to buy him a lead and a collar because we bring Jay with us to look after us, so we actually get to the gig.
No, it was great. It was great, Brighton Fringe. It was great. You did a solid like little run. It was, what's it, 3 nights you did, didn't you?
3 nights, and we did love your new teaching technique of I'm not turning up for the last night. Fucking get on with it yourselves, you bastards. Run your own show. That was a genius new. I hope you're now introducing that on the advanced course.
Yes. This is it. Everyone on the intermediate and advanced course. I want to do an Edinburgh show, but we'll invite Jay along. And then right at the last one, can't make it. Sorry, you have to do it all yourselves. Then write an hour. Fuck it. That's the way how to do it. That's the way how to do it. But less. But no. But yeah, no. I'm going up to the Fringe. It'll be my 17th year. I'm going up to my 17th.
Jesus
year.
Christ, that needs a campaign medal.
I know.
Long service award.
But no, I'm going up this year. I'm so looking forward to it. I think ever since COVID, before COVID, I think I got a bit complacent about Edinburgh. But then after COVID, because I missed it so much, I went on a massive writing spree throughout all of COVID because I had nothing else to do. And then when Edinburgh opened back up again, I could not wait. And I kind of a bit of my younger self started to come back because I kind of thrive on pressure. I love gigging. I love performing. I love keeping myself busy. And pre-COVID, I think I just got a bit complacent. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go up and just teach and just do some spots, and that's it. And I think what that was really because is I got tired. It does take a lot of effort to write a new hour show every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got a bit tired. And I wanted to take maybe a year or two off. That year or two suddenly turned into 7. 2 years with COVID. And then suddenly I was like, why would I ever give this up? And suddenly that's the motivating factor for me again. I'm hungry for stand-up again.
Well, I'm going to let's link it into, I'm going to try and do a professional segue here and go back from your training into what the subject matter is. And it's something we really enjoy when we've done all of our courses with you is you never once wrote a gag for us. It was that point of we created our own material. And so that's the first part about unique. Let's talk about the industry standard for it, what is expected of you. When you go to the stage, you take your own material. You write your own gags. Jake, from a professional point of view, you've done all the scales, everything from being an open micer to being a tutor, a booker, the entire lot, and running your own shit. What is wrong with using somebody else's material and what could happen to you?
I think there's a bit of a history to all of this. I think ever since alternative comedy became more the mainstream, previous to that, you had your old school comics, your Bernard Bannings and your Jim Davidsons, all these kinds of people. And it was actually expected that people just traded jokes and you just heard the same jokes over and over and over again from different comedians. I remember I did a night at a working men's club gig, and there were 3 old school traditional comics, a drag act, and me, right? And they booked the alternative.
You're sure you weren't the drag act?
Well, you've seen me sometimes. I wear the lipstick well. But no, they booked the alternative comedian in the middle of all of this stuff. And the first act, he did about 40 minutes, right? And then the second act did about half an hour. And at least a quarter of that material was exactly the same as the guy who went on first, right? and the audience, to be perfectly honest, this is the evolution of audiences. The audience sat there and went, heard it. And I think when alternative comedy started to kick in, it was almost like a motivation that like we're going to break so far away from the old school kind of stuff that we're not just going to do just hack gags over and over again. We're actually going to write all of our new stuff. I think that's also in hand with audiences I think got bored of just listening to old gags over and over and again. Yeah, they could be delivered really, really well, but I think they want something new. So yeah, I mean, like, this whole thing about nicking gags is the thing that kind of people hark back to the old days. Now, from an audience's perspective, there are some members of the audience who don't mind listening to old gags, and they'll kind of just happily accept it. And there are other people who kind of sit there, and I would say this is the vast majority nowadays. The vast majority of people kind of sit there and go, "Oh, I've heard this joke before. Oh, okay." And that takes
Yeah.
your uniqueness away from you. So in which case you're now not unique. You're literally that old guy who's just literally peddling old jokes over and over again, which pretty much everyone has heard. So yeah, this level of uniqueness is something that probably really stemmed from this alternative comedy movement. And it sets you apart. Whereas previously, you know, if you put Bernard Manning on and Jim Davidson on, 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you they will have the same jokes and so on and so forth. But now you can go to a comedy night and see 4 or 5 different comedians, and they'll all have completely different material and a different perspective of stuff. So this level of holding, like, this level of originality of writing material and, like, you know, owning it, and other people not nicking it, is something that's really, I think, taken a hold of the comedy circuit now. That, hey, look, the world's far bigger than it ever used to be. People are far more educated than they ever used to be. There's so much more going on.
There is a big caveat to that as well, isn't there? I mean, we talk about the project comedy community primarily, but this applies to every kind of comedian. There's a difference between having original material on the stage and somebody else writing a gag for you. So, for example, you know, us guys, we've ended up finding gags that work for the voices of other comedians. It's not a joke that would work for us, but we know it would land with somebody else. That's fine and dandy doing it that way. It's not that you're repeating somebody else's material, isn't it?
No, correct. I mean, to kind of say or make it very clear, when we're talking about nicking material, is about like someone who hasn't written the joke, who sat there, has heard somebody else do it on stage, and they've sat there and gone, "Oh, I'll just nick that and do it for mine." What you're talking about is a group of people going to write for each other. That you're not going to then use that joke on stage for yourself. Somebody else has kind of gone, "Well, I'll have that joke," and that's how it all works. You're workshopping, essentially. That's a completely different thing to nicking material. But yeah.
I mean, there was one example I can remember. I ended up doing an afternoon gig, which afternoon gigs are hard. They're really hard because, number one, let's be honest about it, they're not pissed yet. You go to a comedy club, you go out for a bloody good time. I did this afternoon gig, and there was this random fella. He gets to the stage, he's brought loads of friends with him, because it turned out it was a single person's club. A single person club for people that are in their middle age, and he had brought all of his mates. He gets up and he does a really interesting routine, and I'm stood next to the booker, and he just went, this is pretty impressive. I wasn't expecting him to be talking about Roe v. Wade and all this sort of stuff. And I went, there's a reason for that. And he went, why? And he went, give me 2 minutes. Looked it up, and what he had done is he had memorized Trevor Noah's opening set from the night before and brought that to the stage. So I gave him the link, and the look on this booker's face was like, right, I need to go and have a word. And it was, this guy was so elated that he got such a great reception, but then to see the booker go, you ever do that again on my stage, you will never gig again. And I'm telling you, I will not book you for 3 months minimum. It was a real shocker to this. Jamie, have you ever seen anybody get caught out for using somebody else's gag?
Not personally, no, but I have read it. It happens quite a bit, you know, more often than you'd expect, really, which is a shame.
I don't know if it's actually been given agreement, but I've noticed a couple of times that Sandy Toxvig has ended up repeating gags said on QI. So she used a couple of Jimmy Carr's retorts back to her on stage. So I'm just assuming that Jimmy must have gone, go on, go and use that. But it would have disappointed me as a stage member, as an audience member, to see Sandy repeat something I've already seen on BBC One.
Yes,
It's much as Jay was saying, I've paid to see you. Let me see something original.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what probably happened. I mean, once you are sort of a big enough comic, you own your voice, you own your material. An audience will come to see you, as it were. So if they write a joke or say something on a TV show that you know a few people kind of watch and so on and so forth, they're quite happy to go, you can keep that joke. What tends to happen is comedians will write their own material, but they'll be very protective of that when they're doing their own show. If they're on an ensemble kind of show with other comedians and they're just improvising and shooting the breeze, fine, doesn't matter who really owns it. But when it comes to them writing their own show, they're very protective of it.
I do find a lot of comedians, I've seen Peter Kay do it and Jimmy Carr do it, in that they'll use jokes from their material, and then when they do an interview, they'll cherry pick little bits out and filter it into their interview.
Yeah.
I've seen them do that, and I've been like, oh yeah, because if I've seen their hour-long show, and then I've seen them in an interview talking about their hour-long show, they'll kind of weave in jokes from that. That's interesting.
It's kind of like the comedy version of a trailer. So they've done an interview and they've kind of chucked in a couple of gags to whet an audiences who've not
but they've
seen
done it as like part of the conversation. It's interesting how they've done it. Yeah, they've just kind of branched off into a little bit of their set, or like a little token of their set. But yeah, like a trailer.
It reminds me of something you said to us once upon a time, Jay. Many moons ago, you used to work with Mock the Week, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when it actually came to that big wheel rotating, and I'm there going to, where does that material come from? And you said how they actually have found the material to use in those tiny little setups.
Yeah, it's entirely staged. I hate to break anyone's kind of like image of Mock the Week, but it was entirely staged. But they have to be. They have to be. The reason being is, you know, like, it's a topical comedy show. If anyone said anything that hadn't gone through a legal process, that programmer gets sued straight away.
True.
And henceforth, that's why it has to be that level of scriptedness and so on and so forth. So yeah, I've been there on behind the scenes and seen all of it and know exactly what it is. And so you know, it's a great program. They have great writers. I used to be one of them. But yeah, I think my episodes were the best ones. I'm just saying.
100%. I don't know what episodes they were, but they were the best.
All the ones you laughed at, they were mine. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Project Comedy would just like to point out that is exactly the reason why Mock the Week has been taken off the air, because Sodagar is no longer writing for them.
I was just too funny for them. Could have
been worse. You could have got replaced by an AI.
Can AI do comedy?
AI comedian.
AI comedy.
Gosh. I would also like to point out that we are not joined by Jay Sodagar. He's actually just chat CBT. It's
real fakes.
I've written my own podcast plan. Fuck it, I don't care anymore.
What's a podcast plan?
You're just going to go to Edinburgh and see a deep fake of Jay Sodagar. It's actually me in brown face. That's all you're going to see in Edinburgh.
He's actually a black Labrador.
Let's go back to the other thing you taught us, Jay. I mean, sort of like, we spent a lot of time about talking about unique gags, but it's taught us it's connection performance material in descending order. Material is the least important thing. Let's move it up a level to performance. Are there ways that you can be unique as a performance? And I just thought of a couple of guys went turn around and look at the way that they actually perform on stage. There's certain things you can do with your performance that makes you unique. And I just thought of, let's go back ages. You know, dear old Steve Wright. Steve Wright being so deadpan when every other comedian was pushing you to the limits.
Compare Stephen Wright to Lee Evans, for example.
Yeah.
Lee Evans was very unique on the. Did Jay? I heard loads of stories about when Lee was doing open mic nights and just making it to the Comedy Store, and people were there going, "That's it. I don't want to walk on after him," because he was so unique.
Yeah.
Can you think of other people that have got unique performance styles that nobody expected?
There's so many. I mean, like Emo Phillips was one of them. He's kind of very.
I love Emo Phillips.
Yeah, Emo Phillips. Like, there's loads and loads. Essentially, you could extrapolate this out to kind of like every well-known comedian has their own style and has their own voice and therefore their own level of uniqueness. Like Lee Evans, manic on stage, absolutely manic, running around all over the place, sweating within 30 seconds. And for some people, that's off-putting. For other people, it's a visual engagement. It's like most other comedians just stand there with a microphone. This guy's running around. You are physically and visually involved in what's kind of going on. Performance is connection, performance, and material all work together. So your performance captures or engages an audience. For example, Harry Hill, right? Harry Hill, no one had ever seen anyone go on stage wearing drainpipe trousers, a suit, bald head, glasses, big wide collars, after a joke going, goal, and all this kind of stuff. I remember the very first time I ever saw Harry Hill. And I just saw a straight comic doing observational material, then another straight comic doing observational material, another straight comic doing observational material, and then Harry Hill closing the show. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't find it funny. But that's only because he was too manic on stage for me. And it went against what everybody else saw. And this was before Harry Hill was even a well-known TV star or anything like that, way before any of this. And the second time I saw him, I actually heard one of his jokes, because the rest of it was like visually disengaging for me. But I heard one of his jokes and I absolutely pissed myself. Like everybody else didn't get the joke. I got it. I sat there, oh, this guy's that's a brilliant joke. And then the third time I saw him, he absolutely destroyed the place. Nobody could follow him. So very similar to like Lee Evans. He was very unique, and a lot of people didn't get it. Same as Eddie Izzard. A lot of people didn't get it. But then slowly it kind of engages an audience, and then that's it. That's how performance is made. And this goes back down to everything else I've taught you about the attitudes that you put on every single line. You own the attitudes. So you can stylize as much as you want, because it's your voice, it's your material, it's your way of doing it. It's not just a straight logical thing that I will do it this way. Well, go to town. Be as creative as you possibly can on the performance side of things as well.
And I think tying that in with your actual personality, though, makes it more authentic and congruent with your own person.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but that was going to give me an example of somebody else where they've ended up becoming unique, but they've actually done the opposite. So the person I instantly thought of was Al Murray. So there he is as the pub landlord, this bigoted, outrageous, misogynistic individual, but his natural character is the most educated double first from Oxford. He's actually flipped his entire character the other way around to many of the character acts. So things like Steve Coogan, the number of characters he's got, becomes unique by becoming a completely different person on the stage for that particular set.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. There's a friend of mine called Marcel, or his actual name is Alexis Dubas, and he does a character called Marcel Leconte. He's a French.
Oh, what a name! What a name!
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But if you Google him, he's phenomenal. He's a very, 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 very talented comic. But he goes into this kind of uber French character, where literally everything he's grumpy about, and he's like sarcastic and everything in this very thick French accent and so on and so forth. And it's unique to watch because there's a level of intelligence that goes on underneath it. And I think this goes quite well with anyone who does a character, for example, like Al Murray or Sacha Baron Cohen. or even Steve Coogan, or even Alexis. There's a level of intelligence that they actually know the character inside out, outside in, to be able to parody it and be able to still have lots and lots of like intelligent material that comes through all of it.
And I suppose that gives you some degree of, well, I'm thinking about our kind of community. So, you know, guys and girls that suffer with things like identity crisis, you know, imposter syndrome, PTSD, and what have you. Going out with a character can give you a safety blanket, because you can see other acts that you assume that's what they're like as a person, but they're not. So if we take the likes of Johnny Vegas, that is not his natural character. James Acaster, not his natural character. Oh God, I've forgotten his name. The PTSD's kicked in. The other deadpan, I had his name for a sec, was the original host of Live with the Apollo. Jack D, not his natural character, but is able to use a unique way of performing to give them a comfort blanket to get on the stage and do what they're doing.
Yeah. All of these kind of things. Again, you're talking about comedians who've come from this alternative circuit. All right. Now, if you look back at old school traditional comics, the ones that were on TV, they also had their own like uniqueness. Tommy Cooper, Morecambe and Wise, Cannonball, all these, they stood out differently to everybody else. But their material was either written by somebody else and bought for and paid for it and whatever, and it was different. Now I think because there's so many different types of comics, from an audience's perspective, they're spoiled for choice. They literally see so many, all sorts of different styles, all sorts of different performances. So this is what makes comedy such a vibrant thing. You look at Richard Pryor, who could.
Oh God, yeah.
His level of performing is telling the truth, or was telling the truth, and then therefore from an audience's perspective, they're hit by that much truth that they go, wow, that's amazing. George Carlin, he would like shout and scream at the audience and tell them all these kinds of things, and an audience sit there and kind of go, wow, this isn't just like simple nod gags, there is a voice behind it. And part of that comes from this level of performance, this level of anger. Bill Hicks, for example, Sam Kinison, all of these people come from this kind of thing. There's a unique level. I think the lesson to kind of learn from this is that everybody is unique. And once you tap into who you really are, and I think stand-up is like this level of self-discovery. Once you find out who you are and you develop your material and you keep writing, you keep editing, you keep performing, you keep doing all these things, and you can then start to stylize all these attitudes to the way how that suits your voice. And that's how you build a persona, and that's how it all works. And that's a beautiful thing about comedy.
What if you're just a loser that lives in your mum's spare room and just masturbates all day, just asking for a friend?
You've just won the student market. You've just won the student market.
I'm really tapped into that loser personality. Absolute.
All this time, I thought it was an act. I thought Daniel was like.
No, as I said, I'm asking for a friend. I did clarify that. I very clearly stated it, so it must be true.
I'm glad you included that caveat, Dan. That was yeah.
Often I ask things for friends, so don't misjudge me, please.
A man of many friends.
Also, Dan, tell your friend, use that cream that I texted you. Use that cream. That really works. That really,
okay.
Jay, let's go to the other third word that you gave us. Because I was racking my brain. I worked out ways. When I was thinking about this episode, I'm thinking, I know how I can be unique in material. I kind of know how I can be unique in performance. Is there a unique way to get connection? Have you seen somebody do something that would inspire us to go, hang on, that's a different way to connect to your audience?
Yeah, I like when I was back in the days when I was kind of doing open mics and stuff. There's a legendary comic. He's still an open mic act, but he's a legend. And some of the people listening to this podcast may have even heard of this guy. It's a guy called Jimbo, right? And I watched a lot of comedy. Up before I started doing open mics and stuff. And I watched a lot of like big name acts and so on and so forth. But this guy was the first act that actually genuinely made me like wee myself. A bit of wee came out in my mouth, right? And how he did this, he walked on stage, right? He walked on stage. I will never forget this. He walked on stage, and the microphone stand, he kind of sort of like went over to it, and the microphone stand just naturally just started sliding down, right? And that was a funny thing. So the audience were like laughing. Oh, okay. And then he kind of knelt down. And as he knelt down, he was now the microphone where it slid down to was actually taller than where he was, right? So he then started to sort of like raise the microphone up. Then he stood up. Then the microphone was actually still way too high. So he then borrowed a stool. He hadn't said a single word, not one word. He then brought a stool. He brought it on stage. He then stood on the stool. And now the microphone is way too low than where he's actually standing. He hasn't said a word. All he's done, and from an audience, all they've seen is him trying to adjust this microphone to get to where his mouth is. So he does that. He then he's then so tall on the stage that he actually starts to peek through one of the ceiling things. So he actually lifts one of the little ceiling tiles, and actually his head disappears into the ceiling, right? The audience are pissing themselves laughter, just literally laughing. Anyway, he comes back down, and then he takes his jacket off, right? And the audience start laughing, and then he puts it back on again, and he listens when the audience stop laughing. And so he keeps doing this every so often, and then teasing the audience by just taking one arm out. He has not said a word on stage. And then he finally sort of like gets the microphone and he adjusts it to his height, and then just takes the microphone out of the stand and just moves the stand out of the way, right? And then his first thing he said, this is after 4.5 minutes, he goes, "I had a bit of trouble getting here today." That's it. This guy hasn't said a word on stage. All he was is just miming to get all of this stuff, and the audience bought into it. They were literally laughing at all this stuff. Now, in terms of what we do as comedians is set up some punchlines. There's no way he would have foreseen that microphone stand would have slid down. And just from that moment, he used that towards building a level of connection. He played the victim, and then played the silly person, and so on and so forth. And that was the most amazing sort of like 5-minute set I've ever seen. And he purely did not say a word. There's loads of different ways in how people connect with audiences. The whole thing sometimes
you just made me realize one that we've seen recently, because as you're explaining that, it's sort of like another connection model that I've seen recently. Hopefully the other guys might have seen it. The recent winner of Britain's Got Talent, the way he connected with the audience was to piss off the panel. He connected with them rather than actually connected with the judges. The fact that he was just running around and taking off, a safety jacket after safety jacket after safety jacket. He connected with the people with the real power rather than the people that are supposed to have the power. His connection came by, I'm ignoring you guys. I'm playing with you guys.
Yeah, no. Like, connection is this, it's an open-ended thing. You can connect with audiences in all sorts of different ways. I remember watching a female comic. She walked on stage many years ago. She walked on stage, and very attractive woman. She stood on stage and didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. Just stood there, just prowling the stage, just walking up and down, just looking at people, right? And there's this level of tension that builds up in the room. And the first thing she says goes, 38 double D, in case you are guessing. Just from playing.
What a winner.
Just from playing the audience's expectation. Bam, suddenly the entire room were in the palm of her hands by that point. And not in that way.
Really? Really?
In both hands.
Bloody hell, that's an intimate gig.
But it's amazing how connection is almost as like, how quickly can you get the audience to laugh? with very little effort. And as soon as you can get that done, that's your level of connection done. So whether it's walking on stage with a silly costume, or walking on stage with wild hair like Milton Jones, or walking on stage saying something in a very funny way, or whatever it is, that's your level of connection, and you can go to town with it. And that's how creative you are. That's where it all comes from.
And now we've got to that point, and we're trying to encourage people into it. Why don't we take a natural pause and show people how they can end up joining Project Comedy? Would you like to join Project Comedy? The reality is, it couldn't be much simpler. All you have to do is get on the internet and find your way over to the Project Recce website. That's Project, the word Project Recce, as in RECCE.org. O-R-G. Have a look in the upper right hand corner, click on the menu and click on Project Comedy. Scroll down there a bit and you'll find a link that says apply now. That will send an email to one of our ambassadors. If you're even more bored, scroll down a little further and you'll actually see a couple of our ambassadors making tits of themselves on the stand-up comedy stage. Nonetheless, just click on the link, get in contact, and you can be as funny as you want to be. So when we're talking about being unique, is it actually important for bookers, Jay? I mean, so forget about moving up to doing something as advanced as you're doing your own fringe show as a pro comedian. When you're new on the circuit, why is it important to show you're unique to a booker, a promoter, or something like that?
Well, I guess it's the obvious thing that everyone can work out. The more unique and funny that you are, the more, from a booker's perspective, it's a business that they're selling. They're selling comedy. They want something that can engage their audience and make them laugh, and their bill is varied and different all the time, with loads and loads of different comics. So yeah, it's like the more unique you are, the more you're likely to stand out. All of the comics that like are slightly above just straight stand up, delivering it straight on stage, and there's something a little bit more, let's say your Harry Hills or your Al Murrays or your Johnny Vegases and so on, they stand out above everybody else. And if they're as solidly funny as everybody else is, then that sells them as an act, as it were. But yeah,
like the X Factor, I suppose, in the TV X Factor TV show.
Well, I'll put you on the spot then, Jay. I'll put you on the spot. You've taught all of us. You've seen what we've done.
Yeah.
So if you turn around and look at, the four major players within Project Comedy, so myself, Jamie, Dan, and Gabe, what would you say is our USP as acts from what you've seen with your vast experience of comedians on the circuit?
Well, this is again thing. You're all different. Like Gabe, when I saw him, he's like, he's dark, like as in not in color. I'm not racist. I'm not racist. The material that he does is so dark and unique. And from him, that's his uniqueness. The way how he looks is completely unique. Like again, yourself. You talk about you're very likable and you're very honest on stage, and that vulnerability comes through from an audience, plus your sarcasm that comes through it all, so that you're a bit more of an everyman, as it were. With Jamie's kind of got more jokes. He's got like, bang, this is the point I'm trying to make, this is it, and so on and so forth. And all of these things are part of your own uniqueness that kind of come through all of this. So if we kind of go back to what I was kind of teaching in the course, what you do is you do these exercises called rant and raves. And if you remember, that material comes from you. It doesn't come from drawing a mind map and trying to link one thing to another thing and trying to contrive a joke. It comes from you. And your brain works a particular way. And as soon as you understand how your brain is wired and you do the exercises, suddenly all of these things pop up. Again, to repeat what you said, I never wrote a single joke for none of my 8,000 odd students that I've taught. I have never written one of their jokes, never, not one, whether it be the beginners, the intermediate, or the advanced. But what I do is teach you where this stuff comes from. And this, sometimes I get very angry about stuff like this. These books about how to write stand-up comedy, they teach you very contrived methods of how to write a joke. And what that basically means is they're teaching you how to become a hack comedian. If another person has compared, oh, what about Tom Cruise compared to a cucumber? Oh, what's the funny things in that? Well, chances are 3,000 other people have probably written stuff just like that because they've read the exact same book and they've come up with the exact same things, and it's all the same. Whereas you find the funny in what you've experienced and what you've done. Your personalities are the very things, the very currency of stand-up. All of these acts, your Al Murrays and all of these kinds of things, and Michael McIntyre's and your Jerry Seinfeld's and all these people, they have their personality and they're so in tune with their personality that they've created an act, they've created this, and they know how to live within it, and henceforth perpetually write for that. And that's the real nub of how unique you are, by knowing that you are different to everybody else because your personality is different to everybody else. And I think one of the biggest problems is a lot of new comedians kind of watch someone who's quite unique, but they're not aware that they've actually gone through a whole level of self-discovery to figure that bit out. And they've just kind of gone, oh, I'll be a clone of that particular comic. Well, then what ends up happening is they just end up sounding just like somebody else. And it's the biggest problem I've seen with a lot of new comedians. They try and clone somebody because they see them being successful, getting laughs, and they want to be like that. So then they just clone it. They write their own material, but then they just clone whatever this delivery is. And then it kills out any level of uniqueness. They don't stand out at all. And again, going back to the industry, they want to put bums on seats in theatres. They want to sell stuff. So the more unique you are and different you are, but funny, suddenly you can elevate yourself quite up the ladder very, very quickly because of that. And that does involve a lot of self-discovery.
Because when you said clone, it reminded me of something that's turned me off of a couple of comedians. Because when they first appeared on the circuit, I kind of liked them, and then they suddenly, oh my God, I'm starting to worry they've become a clone. My example would be Michael McIntyre. You know, I loved Michael when he first arrived on the circuit, but then when I started seeing him do stage shows, I'm there going, oh, you're trying to be Lee Evans. You're bouncing around the stage so much. So you I'm not saying he has, but it's almost like he's stolen the physicality of Lee Evans to amplify what he's doing. And it's sort of like, well, you don't feel as unique as anymore. You were, when you were originally on the scene, I love what you were doing. It was so observational, but now you're trying to, the skipping sketch will be the classic one when he ended up doing it for me. Like, oh, it's easier to skip than it is to walk. And I'm there going, but that's something that Lee would have done, not Michael, the comedian I knew.
No, sure. I mean, that can also be just his natural way, and there may be a similarity with Lee Evans. And no, certainly I've seen lots of Michael McIntyre, of him literally running around on stage, and sometimes I've even sat there and gone, you don't have to run around from that part of the stage to that part of the stage to then make that one comment and so on and so forth, and then do this exaggerated voice and so on and so forth. But that's just maybe just a commonality between him and Lee Evans. But nonetheless, I mean, you know, it's unique enough for people to kind of watch and kind of go, yeah, that's really good. But yeah, no, I mean, clones. When I mean clones, I'm talking about. I used to see this a lot when I first started. There were a lot of comedians who kind of thought they were Bill Hicks, so they all tried to mimic Bill Hicks, and they tried to be this dark kind of person. Bill Hicks, back in the 90s, had already been doing comedy for close to like 25 odd years at that point. He started when he was 12, for crying out loud, right? And he can speak in setups and punchlines. And a lot of new comedians, all they saw was like, oh, he's angry on stage. I can be angry on stage, so therefore I'll be exactly like Bill Hicks and I'll be as successful as Bill Hicks. No, that's not what he does at all. There's a lot of craft that Bill Hicks used to put into a lot of it. It was very sharp and tight. If you transcribe a Bill Hicks show and look at what everything you've learned, you'll sit there and go, that's the setup, punchline, 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 setup, punchline, punchline, punchline. What these people see is, oh, he's angry. I can be angry. Perfect. And it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Let me throw it back at the lads. So, we've had Jay say it. Jamie, I'm going to start off with you, mate, before you fall asleep, because at the moment we're actually recording on Zoom and it looks like he's going to go to bed in about 30 seconds. But when you're actually writing your set, getting ready for a performance, what do you think is unique about you? What do you try to take to the stage to be unique?
The outfit I wear, I think. I definitely, going back to when we did the Brighton Fringe, the first 2 nights I was just in normal civvies, and then for the final night, I bought a suit with me. I thought I might as well wear it, and I came on in a nice smart suit. And it was like almost like a suit of armor. I thought, this gives me a bit of stage presence. It makes me a bit different on stage, look a bit different. I'll use it.
You did wake up completely in that third performance here. This blue suit, which I'm now going to refer to permanently as the Blue Man Group. The fact you came out in this blue suit, and we're not talking dark blue. We're talking about this blue suit, and it was, I hate to say, it's almost like a throwback. Do you remember the bad old day? I'm not saying it's the bad old day, but every comedian that was, not every comedian did it, but most comedians that were on the TV turned up in a sharp suit.
Yeah.
Jamie turned up in a sharp suit that was a different color, but it was your body armor. But I don't think that's what made you unique. I think what made you, it was your body armor that enabled you to get to your performance. What makes you unique is what you talk about and why you find it funny. So talking about OCD, talking about how the wife reacts to you, the way you actually see the world, your engagement with hobbies like your daughter being into pony riding, and you suddenly discovered you're paying to be a peasant. That's what makes you unique. It's
my experiences.
Your experience, not just your experiences, but your take on those experiences is what makes you unique. Nobody else would go, oh, having a horse, that makes you posh. And you're there going, no, makes you a fucking peasant because I'm picking up poo and I have to pay for it. That is a genius take that nobody else had thought about.
And they're the plus points.
When you're writing, Dan, do you think anything about what you're doing or when you're performing makes you think I've got a different take than other people?
No, not really.
Succinct answer. Thank you very much.
The only thing that's different about me is obviously DNA, chromosomes. And also as well, I do always think one unique thing about me is that my hair, it joins from my head all the way to my toes, but because I'm quite light-haired, it doesn't actually look as though I'm really hairy. Because, like, a lot of my hair is blonde and it sort of joins all the way. My neck hair joins onto my chest hair, which joins onto my belly hair, which joins onto my legs all the way.
I mean, I've told you so many times, don't perform naked on the stage anymore. But it's the fact it bypasses your pubes that really upsets me.
But underneath, I'm thinking, look, I'm just here wearing a very plain T-shirt. I look very boring and dull, but I'm really hairy, and a lot of it is blonde hair. So that's what I say. Stick it to the man.
Do you know what I'd do if I were you, Dan? I'd come on stage, but before I showed myself, I'd just have dry ice on the stage, yeah, like the mists of time and space. And you come to front center stage in a onesie and go, hello. The shock factor. Boom.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Oh, Jamie, I've just thought of your new connection opening gag now. What you need to do is walk onto the stage in that suit and then produce a collection of dice and roll them and go, right, so I've got a D20 here. I've got to tell gag number 5. So you can engage the nerd culture. That would be a way to break.
I've just thought of something else that makes me unique. I've
Go
got a quite an extraordinary collection of multi-tools. I've got like 4 Leathermans. I think that's quite unique. And
Knife.
I've got about 3 axes.
Right, now I'm somewhat concerned. This is now suggesting you're going to go to the
I don't want to
stage
know about your
tooled up.
chopper, Dan.
No, but none of them are the best. This is the best part. This is the best part. None of them are that dangerous. Because a lot of them are like for like making my own kindling and stuff like that.
Kindling?
Yeah.
Do you mean kindling?
Yeah. exactly that.
You make small children out of wood in Germany. They kindling.
Kindle, that's like a North Korean version of kindling.
No, what I was going to say was, when I look back at myself and I go, so what makes me unique? I had the best indoctrination I could have been given. I was so lucky that my first ever live gig, a good friend of the podcast, and we have to invite him on the podcast, Matt Roseblade. He gave me my first gig at Puns and Roses, and he turned around to me and went, so tell a joke about the dog then. Because I had told him I've got an assistant's dog. And I went, so all of my gigs to that point had been COVID, it was Zoom gigs. Hawk was never. I had to start telling gags about Hawk. So that's unique about me when I enter the stage. Is I walk on the dog, walk on the stage, walk on the dog. No, I definitely walk on the stage, but I walk on the stage with a dog. So I've got to tell a joke about that. Now that helps me with connection, but that doesn't make me a unique comedian. It's a great way to be unique in connection. What makes me unique on my act is the fact that I am one of the few people that's so open and honest about PTSD being horrible and finding the humor in it. I hate to say it, but it almost feels like it's my mission to go, but it's okay. Be nice to people with PTSD. It's terrifying. It's scary. You don't want to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about something scary, horrible, and terrifying, and you'll be happier with them. It's almost like I'm teaching on the stage about a mental health issue, but it's a different take to bring funny to the stage.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's very, very, very well put. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And I love you all for backing me up on that, saying, Jay, you're so unique and lovely. You're just such a lovely guy to perform with. And yeah. Fuck you too. Fuck you too.
Your sideburns are looking quite unique, I must say.
Oh, sorry, Jay Saunders. Jason, quickly, you have to get off now. You have to get off now. Is that okay?
Pub's closing.
Your kryptonite is definitely
Just
good
put it out
Wi-Fi. That is your kryptonite.
And I'm
That was a
going to
unique
leave this in the
connection moment.
podcast. There will be a blooper reel episode after tonight. There will be a blooper reel episode after tonight. It's going to be its own special episode with no number. It's going to be there because there's been too much fun.
Every episode's a special episode.
Yeah, special needs, mate. Special needs, and we all
First
know
time I join in for ages, and you got to make a blooper reel.
it.
I'm not quite sure what that says about me, but
I suppose the reason we're talking about unique, and this is from my perspective, I'll ask the boys if they feel the same way about it, is once you actually get on the circuit, you see other acts, you start to get worried about why are people going to look at me when there are all these other acts out there that instantly their USP and you're terrified you're competing against them. So I wanted to talk through. Well, let's take the stereotype. We don't necessarily walk on the stage announcing this. Maybe we should and break it. But the stereotype of a veteran is that we're all middle-aged, straight white males with a really, really dark sense of humor. We're all Tory voting conservatives. We're excessively strict and aggressive. That's what the public
Not
view
fucking
of
aggressive,
comedians-
man.
That's just Dan.
It sounds like you've described David Goggins. Stay hard, bro. Stay hard.
The last time I did that on the stage, they threw me off. I mean, I'm never having an erection on stage again.
How much Viagra do you need?
I'm microdosing. I'm only microdosing.
Do you think David Goggins tells? Do you think he speaks to his wife like that, or his wife speaks to him like that? I don't know. David, stay hard, David. I'm not going to give up. Just keep going with a softie. I come 20 minutes ago. I'm going to keep going until it gets hard again.
Go through the pain. Go through the pain.
The pain. Urgh. I'm turning into Mr. T now.
Mr. T with that accent. That's never going to fucking work. I mean, you just whitewashed the A-Team. You cannot be an aggressive Mr. T with that accent. Fucking hell. We're going to get censored for this episode.
That's a very weird Mohican. It starts from here and it goes all the way back down to his toes. Goes all the way back.
The only trouble is it goes forward. It's straight down his chest. He's got a Mohican down his chest and pubes. Well, if he had any.
I'm basically an albino chimpanzee.
But what I was trying to allude to is when you actually get out on the circuit and you encounter what I personally believe is the most joyous part about being on the circuit is you've got people from every freaking walk of life. And it's the fact that you can turn around and go, oh, they're going to be popular. They're going to get selected because they are more unique than me. The fact that you're going to be performing with acts that are LGBTQIAF plus, the fact that you're going to be, and there are going to be acts that are non-white, so you've got the British, Asian and minority ethnic community out there. The fact that there's an ever-growing community of neurodivergent acts, and they use their act to be neurodivergent. What I'm trying to point out is sort of like it's so easy to look at the other acts on the circuit and go, they're more unique than me. Is that something you should actually be worried about, or is it something you should just play with?
Because they're a minority group, that's ridiculous. I mean, look, just because I'm a straight white man that is sort of like abnormally handsome and got a big fat juicy cock, it doesn't mean that I can't be just as good as the others.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to point out the Project Comedy Podcast has to point out there is a Trade Descriptions Act. That was a joke.
In my last Gong show, the act that actually won completely ripped into the audience. That was his attitude. That was his sort of USP. Completely different to how I approach it, doing a set. But that didn't worry me because that wasn't me. Yeah, but it's just it was to see different styles. It's different. Seeing different styles doesn't worry me, but I can pick up how they relate to my performance connection and material.
Mm-hmm. Well, a gong show. See, that's a very interesting point. Like, how you win a gong show?
Oh, gong show. I thought you said a dong show.
A gong show. We're going back to
Dan, you're going to the wrong gigs. I've been telling you where to get bookings. Right, stop going to fucking gay clubs when they're not having a comedy night. I've told you about this.
You can't get decent gigs on Grindr.
But going back to this thing about gong shows, the audience tend to run the gong show because it's down to the audience's whim, whether they're heckling and whatever it is. And connection, performance, and material is even more vital in a gong show. And how you connect with an audience. On another gong night, this person going up on stage and berating the audience could have gone completely the other way and gone, I don't like people berating us. We're in charge, not you. But because it did, and the audience were in that frame of mind, that's why he won the gong show. This is why connection is the most important thing, because when you're doing a gong show like that, you've got to read the room and figure out exactly what needs to be done. And everyone's going to have a unique way and different way of doing it. Some person goes on stage and plays an instrument. Other people kind of like go straight on and tell one-liner jokes. Other people want to go on and tell a story. Other people want to berate the audience and so on and so forth. There's a whole different mix. And whoever wins the gong show, basically what that really tells you is that is what the audience wanted. And that's how they took control of the situation. But in terms of this level of competition, when you're kind of an act, there's so many different types of acts, and the very nature of it is that they're trying to connect with the audience. If you kind of sit there and kind of go, oh, that person's got their own unique thing and that's why they're connecting with that particular audience and so on and so forth, well, then there's no point in trying to clone it or trying to copy it to help you trying to connect with the audience. The best thing to do is literally just be yourself. And this is a thing that took me a while before I understood this, because when I first started, I didn't know what my voice was at all. And I didn't know what was kind of, apart from being Asian. As a bit of a history point, when I started, there were only 4 Asian comics on the
Jesus Christ, we've got an Asian in the room, people. This is a podcast. They didn't know.
It's not the lighting. It's not the lighting. It's not the lighting. But there were only 4 Asian comics. So I was unique in the fact that there were black acts, there were white acts, and then suddenly this Asian guy walks on stage and starts talking to us. And there's a duality to it. There's part of me that sat there and gone, okay, well, that's my level of how I can connect with the audience as quickly as possible. But also there could be a prejudice that I go on stage, the audience may suddenly go, I don't understand why this person's on stage, so therefore I'm not gonna go with it. So this is why one of the things when I started, I would do Asian jokes very quickly, straight off, as soon as I go on stage, but I'd do no more than 1 minute. That's it. Stop it after 1 minute and then go on to something else. Because by that point, the audience have seen that I'm actually funny, and then I want to go and talk about whatever I want to talk about. Which I think was quite a unique thing for me, because a lot of the other Asian acts did 10 minutes of talking about being Asian. And I didn't do any of that stuff. And again, like, you know, it worked most of the time, but in other cases it didn't work, where the audience had an expectation, like, why aren't you just doing more like Asian jokes? Why can't you put on an accent and so on and so forth? But don't forget, this was like the mid-90s when I started, and I had black hair.
On an accent.
Even my hair went to my toes as well. Even my hair.
It probably still does. It just starts a little bit lower.
It starts my ankles and then goes down to my toes.
And I think that's important, isn't it? It's sort of like people go to a night out to be entertained and have a laugh. So you've got to have a unique take. Nobody really wants to be lectured at. Nobody wants to be convinced of something. Unless you're funny, what's the point of being on the stage?
Correct.
Yeah, be a politician instead. Go and do that thing. You're going out there to be funny, but you've got to find a unique way to be funny.
Absolutely. I think
the guy in the gong show that I was on about, with the guy that won with berating the audience, the guy that was the runner-up was actually a comic magician. So yeah, again, that's a completely different style. The audience weren't expecting that. It was sort of observationalist, and then he came on and started doing card tricks and sort of pulling flowers out of his.
I've got to admit a personal bias. I fucking hate magicians. Magicians on a fucking comedy stage. Learn a fucking gag, you wanker. Will you stop doing this shit? It really, really winds me.
It.
If you want to do that, Go and do fucking wedding parties and entertain people at the table. Fuck off. Don't enter a stand-up comedy stage. It's not funny.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think Tommy Cooper's brilliant. I quite like that.
Yeah, but that was the joy of Tommy. He wasn't a magician. He
Actually,
fucked everything up.
He was
was
genuinely a
brilliant.
pretty good magician as well.
Yeah, he was a
Project
good
Comedy
magician,
would like to announce that these are the views of Jay Saunders, not Project Comedy. Some magicians
Don't forget,
are
I edit
funny.
this podcast. I edit this podcast. My
You
views
also-
will be only views.
You also freely admitted you edit feces.
There's one thing we can take away from this. This is a unique podcast. Nobody else is allowed to talk about this shit.
I think it's more important to be authentic to your own personality than being unique. But in turn, being authentic to your own personality makes you more unique.
Yes.
That's almost the takeaway from the podcast, isn't it? It doesn't matter who you are. So anybody listening to the podcast, you're a unique individual. So if you take your unique personality to the stage, you're a unique comedian.
Mhm.
But actually, us as servicemen, let's go back to the stereotype I gave. We're middle-aged, straight white males that are Tory voting, angry twats that are going to be very strict disciplinarians. The second you show an audience, you're not part of that stereotype. You can show your own uniqueness, and then you can add your personality. Actually, coming from a background of being a veteran, you've got so many opportunities to be more unique than many of the other acts going to the stage. You've just got to look at what your stereotype is and show your audience you're not that stereotype.
Or what about take that stereotype and push the limit? Take it to the next level.
Turn into a drill sergeant. I can see it. I can see it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I'm going to tell a really crap story here. I don't know if it'll make the podcast, but
You're editing it. I'm guaranteeing this will make it into no edit.
He's frozen
many
again.
years ago, before I did stand up, I used to do stage acting. I was Amdram actor and what have you, and I ended up writing stage plays. I wrote a stage play. I won't name it, but it was a collection of 10 short little plays that interconnected. One of them I can't remember what I called, but anyway, it was all about a guy entering the wrong profession. Basically, it was a former sergeant major drill instructor trying to be a children's entertainer. And it's a monologue of this drill instructor sergeant major trying to entertain an audience of, preschool kids, ordering them to have fun. It was taking it and playing it over the top. You could turn a character by anything we get from military service.
Yeah, 100%. I think the stereotype that you were talking about earlier, I think that comes from people's perception of the job and what you must be like at the job, and they associate what you do at the job with you personally. Now, you are all different. You're all not, you have to do that when you're doing the job. But outside of that, you're your own personalities, which people don't necessarily see, because you have to be a certain way for the job. But that's the beautiful part of this, is that you can break that stereotype very quickly, or if not, live it up, and make it an even more of a character, as it were. But yeah, that's the unique part of it.
If I turn around to each one of you in turn and go, right, when it comes to unique, what is the one thing that is your takeaway from what we've discussed today? And I'm going to scare him again because I know he's going to love it. Jamie, when we're actually talking about trying to be unique on stage and what you've encountered the circuit, what does being unique mean to you?
Just being myself, because I think it's more, you give a more natural performance if you are yourself, or the character that you've defined yourself as. If you try and be something else, then it's gonna show in your performance. So just embrace the fact that you are who you are, and use that to your advantage.
100%.
Dan, go on then. You can follow on. You can follow on,
just
Dan.
following on from what Jamie said, 100% agree. I think that the main word is authenticity. You know, like you're saying, like Jamie said, being true to yourself.
Jay.
That's a very unique point of view there, Daniel. I just copied whatever Jamie just said. Very unique, very ironic. But
I know it feels like it's like the end of an Oprah show now, doesn't it? We're all kind of like taking away the points.
Our final words. This is it.
Like some sort of Americanism, you know. Be true to
Jerry
yourself.
Springer's final words.
Exactly,
Yes, I can say it. I can say it.
It does feel a bit like that now.
This is something that I obviously I talk about in the course and so on and so forth. But this what I sort of take from all of this, and what this podcast has really done is validated everything from seeing all of your perspectives and all of this, is that for me, when I go on stage, I know that I'm being me. I'm not being somebody else. I'm being me. And when I first started doing comedy, I almost sometimes sat there and thought, hey, maybe I should be a bit like this person or a bit like that person and speak in their voice and so on and so forth. And it took me a while before I stripped all of that away and suddenly realized I've actually got the golden ticket here. It's actually me and the way how I've always looked at things.
Yes.
And that's why I still am very attached to stand-up, because it's my outlet. I can say whatever I want to say. So I do these rants and raves and so on and so forth and come up with funny stuff about subjects that I have a certain level of knowledge or passion for. So yeah, no, I mean, to kind of copy what Jamie just said, just be yourself and be authentic. Just the same as what Daniel said, just be yourself and be authentic. And that's it.
Our answers are not very unique for this part, are they? Just be yourself, man.
We are the Borg. We are the collective.
I suppose my take for people to think about when they're actually walking on the stages, we're all unique because we're unique individuals. If you take something you've created, not somebody else, you've created, and you go, this is my message, or this is the way I want to approach it, that's fine. Stop comparing yourself to others, because that will hinder your performance. You've got your own material. You found your own way to connect. Go out there, be you, and be the best you can be. Doesn't matter if you're doing it as a character act. Doesn't matter if you're pretending to be angry when you're normally a passive person. Doesn't matter if you're worried that you're being a clone. Go out and be your own person. I'm not going to use the word authenticity because you three fuckers have said it and stolen it from me. So that's the irony of unique. We'll close off with a couple of adverts then. All right. So Jay, I'm going to let you do your big advert. So please tell us again, where are you performing? What's the name of the show?
Well, I'm doing the Early Late Show, which is a chat show, and that is at the Three Sisters at 2:45 p.m. It's a great chat show. If you ever watch the Thursday show, and you can YouTube the Thursday show, we did this thing online. There's a chat show. It's a chat show that we invite comic mates along, and we kind of talk about comedy and so on and so forth. It's a really interesting chat show. I'm doing my solo show, which is called Man of the Century. At 6:30 at Bar 50 in Edinburgh, so that's on Cowgate. And I'll also be teaching the comedy course up there as well. So if you want to learn about it or watch any of the graduation shows, you're more than welcome to see all the stuff up there.
I'm going to throw in my advert. So hopefully we will get one more podcast in before this actually happens. But in 40 days' time, 40 days time from time of recording. So by the time the podcast goes out, that will be 37 days. I will be flying out to Dusseldorf to take part in the Invictus Games. Yeah, you all know how much I love my comedy, but for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be focusing on trying to be a pretend version of an international athlete. I think I'm more of a special needs athlete than an international one, but I'm going out with some amazing guys. So please look at the Royal British Legion. Please look at the Invictus Games Foundation and start supporting the team that we're sending out to the Invictus Games. Anything you want to plug in, Jamie or Dan?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be gigging in Nottingham next month at the NCF, the Canal House. Yeah, dates to be confirmed. Yeah, the end of I think it's September. So yeah, about 6 weeks, I think. Yeah, something like that.
I feel like I should feel like I've got to say something that I'm going to be doing now after that. So I'll just say that probably Friday night, me and the missus watch a movie.
Have a shave.
Probably got a
Testing grooming
barbecue planned for
products.
Sunday. So I'd just like to throw that in there as well. If anyone's interested,
If anyone wants to
you're not
watch
invited.
Daniel, if anyone wants to watch Daniel have a shave, then go round his house. Like
Is that on
plenty of head.
OnlyFans?
That would be subscriptions only. It will probably take approximately 4 to 7 hours, and $5.99. You can see the whole view from beginning to end. And for a small donation fee, I can send you some of the hair, the actual hair, in the post.
Is that at fulllenthmohican.com?
Head to toe.
I wish there was a easier way for me to link out the episode, but I've now got a full view of Daniel's full-length Mohican. Hopefully we've given you some idea of why it's important to be unique, but then again why it's equally as important not to panic about it. You just get on the stage, be yourself, learn your skills, and be yourself and have a great time. Enjoy comedy in whichever way you want. I've got to thank all of my amazing guests. We'll start off with the stranger himself. Thank you so much, Dan, for turning up.
You're very welcome.
Thanks so much, Jamie Johnson.
You are most welcome.
And of course, to the god that is Mr. J. Sodigar.
I'm only the one god. I can be everywhere. But no, thank you so much. No, I love these podcasts. I genuinely love these podcasts. They're so good. Yes, we rag around, but there's so much good stuff that comes out of it in a fun way as well. And I will never look at Dan the same ever again. Ever.
Can I just say, Jay, you are looking much better than George Alagai.
Oh my God, he dropped it.
He's been waiting an hour to say that. He's been waiting an hour to say that.
You need to do some Project Comedy does not accept responsibility and apologises to the Alagaya family for disrespect or something along those lines.
Thank God we put this podcast out with an explicit rating.
Other dead news readers are available. Look, somebody's got to make up for the void of Gabe in the room. I thought I might as well.
Maybe Gabe's morning Sinead O'Connor.
Has it been 7 hours and 15 days yet?
Oh.
That's how long this podcast has been going. It's been 7 hours and 15.
On the off chance we still will have any listeners for the next podcast after the last 3 minutes of recorded material. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Project Comedy Podcast. I hope you've taken something positive away from this rather than just being insulted by the last 5 minutes. Get out there, go and perform. If you've got any interest in Project Comedy, we will be giving you links at the end of the podcast. But until next time, if there ever is a next time, until next time.
If you want to see what we're actually like on stage, please have a look at our YouTube channel. Search for Project Comedy, Veterans Doing Stand-Up, and look for our black and white logo that's exactly the same as the one we use for this podcast. You can also now follow us on Twitter. We can be found at Proj Comedy. That's at PROJ Comedy. And me, Jay Saunders, I can be found on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you look for Comic J Saunders. That's all one word with the letter J in the middle. Comic J Saunders. Thanks again to everyone that's taken part in this episode. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Project Comedy Podcast. Please support our veterans as they continue their comedy journeys. To find out more, including gigs our veterans are doing, please search for the Project Comedy group on Facebook, where you'll also find links to Project Recce, the veterans charity that makes Project Comedy possible.